Welcome to Intercom Product. I'm joined by Paul, our head of product, our chief product officer. Hey, Paul.
Hey, Des.
And because this is a special roundup, we've brought in Emmet, our VP of design. Hey, Emmet.
Hey, folks.
Today we're going to talk about 2023, the year that was. I know we're a bit late doing that. We'll look back on the highs, lows, and weird shit that happened, and then we're going to look ahead to 2024 and sort of set some expectations, predictions, and just generally like sort of ideas about what might be happening. We'll start with 2023, a year when obviously generative AI ruled the roost. It was really very little airtime for any other topic. When every failing startup strapped the letters AI to its name and every boring incumbent decided to lean heavily on it to try and make themselves sound interesting. Let's start with what was your software moment of 2023, Paul? What made you excited this year? Just gone.
Yeah, it's hard to get away from AI. Every presentation you see, end of year wrap up, it's all generative AI. That's mine too. So the end of 22 was ChatGPT, and then I can't remember exactly when it was in 2023. But whenever OpenAI launched their Vision API, what preceded the Vision API, I think it was a demo by Greg Brockman where he showed hey, this thing can see, and that was incredible. It could recognize photos, it could answer questions. It was just such an obvious step forward, massive step forward in capability. I then ended up it just changed how I think about it too. I ended up having what I was calling my first AI holiday, where myself and my family, my wife and kids went to Seville in Spain, and it was the first time that I was actually just walking around the city, what's this? Translate that, And some of that stuff was possible before with Google Translate and so on. But I literally had a camera on my phone that could now do AI things, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it literally changed how we moved about the city and the choices we made, the restaurants we went to or didn't. It's the beginning of something huge.
Were you at Google when Glass was launched?
No, I think it launched after I left.
Why do you think that you were more keen to pull out a phone than say why didn't Glass work like this here?
I think Glass. Well, it's an interesting conversation we should unpack in a bit. I think Glass was maybe the right form factor at the wrong time. Right. What I mean by that is you see Facebook doing things now like the Ray-Bans, and I think that could be big.
Yeah.
But back then, it was buy this kind of Google pair of glasses, kind of nerdy. It might have been just the right idea way ahead of its time.
All I really remember demoed from Glass was okay, Google, take a picture or some shit like that. It wasn't. I don't think the software was there either.
I was going to say, I don't think the software was there
12 years.
Yeah.
Emmet, over to you.
I was at Google during Glass actually, and in Google X when Glass was being developed, for what it's worth.
So maybe we should ask you.
The software was pretty good. I mean, it did. Yeah, there you go. It did have a lot. I blocked it all out at the stage. I mean, the software was there. It had things like directions. You could search the web, get answers, things like that. A lot of what you could do on your watch today, or a few years ago at least, or on your smart speaker with a small visual, you could do. Yeah.
Right.
Why?
I guess I'm just curious. He describes an AI holiday and walking around a city, being able to see, and it's just feels like we've had many swings at that in some sense. Yeah. What about you? What was your sort of breakout moment for 2023?
In an effort to not give Paul's answer and the obvious answer, which is AI and all the associated stuff, I'm actually going to give my real answer. Mm-hmm. So the most kind of excited and enthralled I got from software this year was a video game, Tears of the Kingdom by Nintendo. And now I'm kind of obliged to explain why. I suppose I'm giving this weird left field answer.
I'll give you 60 seconds to make that make
all right,
sense.
Okay, let's see what I can do. It's a sequel, and first of all, they spent 5 years on the first version of the game and then 7 years on the sequel, even though it was the same fundamental kind of model and system of the game. It's fantastically well designed, but it's amazing to see what 7 years of polish actually does for something. And it's not just the craft, it's the depth and complexity and the entire system of how all the different, things you have in your inventory, power-ups, things like that, work together in perfect balance and harmony. So as well as I would say is a bunch of fairly foundational breakthroughs in terms of how physics systems work and all of the very smart puzzles they were able to do. finally
this
doing
on
it
the
on like
handheld, or is
years old, already underpowered hardware is a massive technical achievement. Yeah, handheld, or you can dock your
Yeah,
Switch
yeah.
and play it on your
Yeah.
TV as
Give
well.
us an example of the physics puzzle. Like what's like.
Like maybe a very long, you could imagine like a rope bridge or something like this. And these are things that are notorious. If you pick up a rope in the middle, the end of it acts very differently.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's very hard to, in physics,
Simulate that,
computationally
yeah.
simulate all that. They've managed to figure out how to do it because they spent 7 years perfecting the engine on top of the previous 5. And that was on the shoulder of
Do you know
giants as well.
what engine is it on?
A proprietary, yeah,
Oh, right,
totally
okay.
proprietary.
I would have thought,
I
like,
have watched
yeah.
like Japanese language game developer conference videos trying to like learn more about how they just, because I became mildly obsessed with the game and how they designed and built it. And so it's like lots of cool in-house stuff they use for designing the
Wow.
levels and things like that. Yeah.
Do you have any hot take on like it's a very different way of building software to what we typically do and what's expected in our industry, which is like ship to learn, iterate fast, learn hard.
They should be on Zelda 11 by now in our
Maybe,
world.
yeah, 100%, or Zelda release patch 11 or something like that, which would just totally take the magic out of the thing. It's a fundamentally different type of thing, although lots of software and games now exist, like with monthly updates, the way that you're describing. But maybe the reason it stood out to me is it's just like super refreshing to see software that isn't iteratively done. I'm obviously a huge fan of the benefits of iterative software development, but it's kind of nice to see the exact opposite approach executed so well as well. Yeah.
That's fascinating. Okay, what about if we go the other direction? Where, like, maybe low light is too strong a word, but where do you think, our industry often gets criticized for like losing a run of ourselves, hype bullshit, like, whether it's like anything from like gamification to blockchain to like social, local, mobile, whatever. What's the downside of AI, do you think? Like, have we gone, is there areas where we've gone too far?
Personally, I think it's maybe a bit too early to say we've gone too far. But I will say, like, some of them, even internally, I'm not making a comment on the industry at large or launches. As we internally and on our design and product team have worked with it, I've noticed that we're figuring out, it's very easy to come up with great applications and misapplications for AI. And some of the misapplications that I think we'll see a lot of products and a lot of features coming out this year, probably already, and next year with those misapplied versions are the ones where maybe it tries to take an infrequent, quite structured task and tries to make it easier with AI. So instead of, going through lots of clicking to set up a very deterministic, let's say, workflow in your product, you could like type a description and have the bot build the workflow for you. The problem with something like that is you have to go and, because the output is deterministic and very precise, you have to go and check the work. It's also kind of an infrequent task that you're doing sometimes. And so you don't get a lot of time saving at all from doing that in the first place. So I think we're still in that, like, figuring out what it's good for and what it's not. Remember, like 5-6 years ago, where everyone was like, the previous hype cycle of bots and conversational commerce, and there was lots of like check the weather or order flowers with a bot, and you're like, it's not really what I need to use a bot for. And so even within products or applications of AI, I think we'll find the good and bad applications.
What's out of curiosity, what's the calculus there? Like, I always felt with check the weather, like, I mean, you're basically writing the words check the weather, but like that's more characters than typing weather.com, like, so I always felt it was like optimizing the wrong part of the experience or whatever, right?
And many fewer taps than tapping the weather.
Right? Exactly.
And that's a daily thing that I tend to do as well. And so having to like type out all of those characters, and that's a very basic one. Like number of taps is probably a good starting point.
So like the anatomy of a misapplication of AI just would be something like you need like. Is it about determinism of the output? Is it about precision of the input? Like, where do you not want to see your designers applying AI?
Yeah, probably in that thing. So I think the current AI tools we have have really opened up the possibility space for the input, user input. Like you can throw a bag of words at the thing, a couple of sentences, and it can do a lot with it. I think we have a lot of work on the product side left on the output side, making the output of that, if it's anything more than just like a couple of paragraphs of text, which is often not super useful for workflows. We need to do more product work to actually to create that output experience. So yeah, I think you saw that like with previous voice assistants as well. Like in the end, things like Alexa Siri and the Google One Assistant are for like what, alarms, checking the weather,
Play a song.
play a song. That's pretty much it. I bet that's like 80% of the uses, right?
Yeah.
And that's because those are the outputs that work really well, right?
Yeah.
The feedback is instant, and you understand precisely what was done.
It's also pretty unambiguous input as well, right? Like, as in, it's
Pretty
it's probably
unambiguous. I think those systems can handle a lot more input,
Yeah.
more complicated commands than to set an alarm. But probably still a lot of the work that needs to be done there is on the output side, I would imagine still. So to answer your question, Des, the areas to avoid are probably the ones where getting the output to be extremely correct, precise, deterministic, no mess ups. If anything goes wrong, it's a disaster. Those are the areas where you will still see people doing a lot of manual clicking, I think, to get their work
like
resolved.
there's an interesting, I'm sorry to go so deep in this, I just think it's interesting and relevant. Like I've seen a lot of tools, like say Kittle is one of these, like, you know, give a text description of the image you want generated, and it'll produce a pretty high end like SVG of like an image that you can then play with it, edit, etc. It's interesting to think about, like, you know, that works when you have a relatively like broad spectrum of acceptability, but as soon as you get into like, no, this really has to look like the rest of my product, before you know it, you're back to drawing rectangles and changing colors, right? Like,
and anyone who's played with Midjourney will tell you it's like awesome if you're like, I don't know, a panda on a skateboard, and it gives you like images that you didn't have in your head, right? But if you have a precise image in your head and you're trying to get the thing to create it, i.e. a deterministic output that you're trying to create, then it's really frustrating and kind of doesn't work.
Oh, totally. And then I also had Victor Ripperbelli from Synthesia on. He was describing like the other frustration is like the slot machine experience of generative AI, which is just like a panda on a skateboard, and you're like, you get that, and you're like, you're happy, but like, I wanted a red skateboard. Then you get a totally different panda on a totally different skateboard. The skateboard might be red, but everything else is gone. It's just like, cha-ching, what happens now? It's so like, anyway, there's an interesting sort of like a kill zone for, like, at least for like in B2B targeted AI features, where it's, you know, like I often give the Workday example, like well-known fact that Des is not a fan of Workday. I don't like using it. I don't like using it to book time off. I think there's like the Workday version of play that song or set a timer is for me like book October 14th off or whatever. It's like, it's precise input, and it's pretty easy to verify output, and it's not susceptible to misinterpretation. Saying something like, design me a chatbot that asks the user the following blah. It's like there's too many ways that goes wrong. And also there's some other like mathematics. Don't worry, Paul, you'll come in a second. There's some other mathematics around like if the cost of validation is effectively the same as the cost of creation, what are you doing by, like, you know, the AI is not helping you a lot. If you have to go and read the entire screen to work out, did this thing do the thing I wanted it to do? That starts to eat into the productivity gain that you got by just typing in a simple input paragraph, right?
I'll tell you what's a good example of what you're just talking about is that you mentioned the specific example of like telling a chatbot to create a chatbot for you, right? Which is how custom GPTs, the OpenAI product, works, right? You go to a tab and you're like, the first time I used it, I was like, oh my God, it's a natural language bot training UI. There's a big thing, and you're chatting to the bot about the bot you want it to be, basically, right? But then you flip to the other tab and you realize that it was a bit of a Wizard of Oz switcheroo, because there's a load of like form fields under the actual, like what you're actually creating is filled out multiple form fields that are a lot more structured and broken out. And as soon as I realized that, I was like, oh, the hell with chatting to the bot. I'm just going to like go straight to the actual output that the bot is creating, right? So a lot of the times we'll have maybe thin wrapper translation layers around actual getting the job done, and sometimes you're like, you know what, it's quicker to know what I'm creating and just create it myself.
There's like some parallel with like, or, you know, like in the a lot of Windows apps back in the day used to have like, you know, simple mode or dummy mode or whatever, and then advanced mode, and it feels like, you know, that might be something we end up rebuilding. Okay, we might come back to this topic. Paul, where do you think we lost the run of ourselves in 2023 in terms of either overhyping or over criticizing, or like just too much extreme opinion?
Just to set the context for what I'm going to say, I think it's unquestionable to me that we're at the start of this new S curve. Like, you know, like technology happens in waves every 5 to 10 years in the kind of current cycle. Last one would have been mainly smartphones. I think it's really clear that the smartphone curve is like look at the iPhone, Android, the the form factors, it's all the same. So we've kind of like, we're at the top of that. Plateaued. And so now this, whatever we end up calling it in the future, generative AI, it's really clear to me that we're at the bottom of this new S-curve. And I think the S-curve includes not just generative AI, but I think it also includes different types of devices. And so like we saw, like obviously we had watches come out a few years ago, but now this year we saw like Rewind, the AI startup had a pendant. We mentioned the glasses, the Ray-Bans from Facebook earlier, and then the Humane pin came out. And when it was just fascinating for me to watch the launch of the Humane pin. For anyone who's not familiar, Humane are a company, they're in kind of stealth mode or whatever for a long, long time, and they came out with this wearable. It's a pin, you kind of put it in a pocket, and it kind of sits in a pocket or attaches to your top, whatever. And the amount of hate that generated from our industry was kind of sad to see. Now, maybe Humane don't have the right form factor, but a lot of people were very quick to criticize, and I think there's a lot to this space. So I thought, it was a kind of a downer. It was actually, I think that week, or there was a kind of a 2 or 3 week moment where like I think the Vision API launched for sure.
OpenAI Dev Day.
They Dev Day. The Humane pin came out. The Rewind pen was running at the same time.
And Tab, which was a kind of like I guess originally like a one of those was a BlackBerry Pi or Raspberry Pi. What's the device called?
Raspberry Pi.
Raspberry Pi. Sorry, BlackBerry Pi. That's V2 or whatever. But yeah, Raspberry Pi. Like I think some guy, I can't remember his name, but he produced a product called Tab, which is effectively like a far cheaper version of Humane that I think he would claim has like very similar capability.
Oh, right. Yeah. I hadn't heard of that. Yeah. So like this space, I think this new S curve that's taken off includes AI, of course, and AI I'm sure will be the foundation. But I think we're going to see all sorts of new types of devices and wearables and all sorts of stuff. So like that, I thought that was like those few weeks were incredible to watch. That was my kind of real. I'm absolutely certain now. Certain we're at the start of this new S curve.
Yeah.
And we saw like the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
And the Humane launch was kind of the ugly.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a sign of the times too. But I think like good for them. They tried to do something. They tried a new thing. There will be many, like if you look back to sort of any of these S curves, it took Google 2 or 3 versions of an Android hardware device to really get it right. Like the first one was this kind of like flip phone thing, and and like BlackBerry kind of like totally lost the run of themselves and ended up reinventing the company. They kind of failed, innovator's dilemma stuff. But I think that was for me like a very insightful moment, because I think there's different ways for people to approach those types of things, and there's something cool going to come out of that space for sure.
I think that's definitely true, and I often remind people like, people took the piss out of Google Glass. We spoke about it earlier, but like it's pretty clear we're all going to have some sort of like technology-enabled headwear of some sort. And similarly, like people took the piss out of Segway, and go to any European or American city, and you see a lot of people on scooters. It's like I think like there are often like, it's like not that these ideas are bad; they might be just early, or they might be the right idea, even at the right time. But it might just the V1 of the form factor wasn't what was needed. It was actually the V2 is where you needed to get to, or whatever. So I think there's a lot there. It's also like you have to remember, like we remember the iPhone launch differently to what the actual reaction was. Like it was literally everyone's taking the piss out of this $700 phone that didn't have a hardware keyboard. It didn't I think did it not have, like it didn't have like 3G. It did there's a lot of shit it was missing. It didn't have GPS. I don't think like it was missing a shitload of things. It didn't have an app store, obviously. Like, and everyone's just like, oh, this thing is like what the hell is the point of this device? And they were all like accurate criticisms that were very, very quickly addressed in future revisions, and then it becomes the most dominant device in the world.
Totally, and even more than that, like I worked in the mobile team at Google when the iPhone came out, and we literally were like running down the street trying to buy them the first day you could actually buy them. And I remember like going down, getting that first iPhone, back to Google, back to the office, and like it was, this sounds stupid now, but phones before that had keys, like a keyboard, and the BlackBerry was like phenomenally successful, all the different BlackBerries. And I remember like we were tapping the glass, and like everyone's like, this thing's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Like amazing keynote, Steve Jobs, incredible keynote, wow. But no one's gonna want this thing. It feels horrible. It's cold. Like the glass is horrible and cold and hard, and people want buttons.
Yeah.
And like again, like 2-3 years later, what does the Android look like? An iPhone.
Yeah.
So like there's versions of this that'll play out for sure. And yeah.
Did you see the iPhone case that someone released this week that has a keyboard in it,
Oh, nice.
and lots of like people who are basically never saw BlackBerry in their lives are, oh my, amazing, like a hardware keyboard for the iPhone, which maybe goes to illustrate, I think, part of the point that you're making, which is like timing is everything on these things as well, and so it's like hard to tell unless you're a couple of years removed.
I think timing and perseverance, like it's interesting contrast to things we talked about so far, like Zelda, software that took years and years and years.
Yeah.
Hardware obviously takes a lot longer than software to build, get right. Like, Humane launched their kind of V1. It's
Yeah.
going to take them a year at least, I'm sure, to have a V2. Like that might be different. And so it took Google and iPhone or Apple, Google anyway, in the early days of Android, run this kind of year-long cycle. So every year there's a new phone, whatever. And the hardware takes longer. So like it's interesting to see how the next versions of these things and what shape and form they'll take. I think we'll see all sorts of different types of wearables: pins, pendants, glasses, necklaces, watches. Like the watch is another one. And
if you're to use the iPhone and ChatGPT as the instigating moments of the S curve that you're talking about, where would you say we are? Like, are we at the iPhone 4S stage?
Oh, no,
in the
I don't
AI?
think
Like,
so.
I think
I think
we're
iPhone
in
1.
flashlight app territory
Yeah,
still.
yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I think
with
we're iPhone
custom
1.
GPUs
I think we're the
and-
very,
yeah,
very
yeah.
start. Yeah. Hence, we should be all like, I mean, all of us are guilty of like looking at something, thinking it's a bit shit, and like, God knows I've slagged off the Segway many times, like, but we're all guilty of it. But I think there's something to the idea that we should be at the start of the S curves, we should be extremely open-minded.
Yeah.
I think we'll look back in 3, 4, 5 years at this generation, these things. I think we look back and we won't be carrying these around necessarily, and there'll be other things happening. And the skepticism and criticism today will look quite naive.
Kind of reminded of like how everyone says like, oh, what's the real world application of say blockchain, like, and that got criticized for so long, and now we're seeing all these like effectively ridiculously convincing fakes, and you're like, oh well, maybe it actually would be good to have a single place where you could say this thing definitely happened and I'm definitely responsible for it. Like, I think like so much tech just takes a while to find a home, and like that's why it's useful to approach these things from a more of a lab-like, open-minded sort of approach. It's just let's see what's possible, and then maybe some of the stuff will be possible and won't matter for like years. Maybe it'll matter a lot sooner. Paul, you mentioned glasses there. Like I think Facebook are onto a total winner with the sunglasses, the Ray-Ban, like Meta, the Meta Ray-Bans. The reason I think that is, I think the LLM that they have is good. So I think the ability to like see a scenario or see a scene and do something useful with it, which is like translate the menu in your Seville example, is one obvious application. I also just think like sunglasses are a thing that people already wear. So unlike many other wearables, even like for a lot of people, like you have to convince them to wear a watch to convince them to wear an Apple Watch, and you have to convince somebody to wear a ring first before they can convince them to wear their ring. Whoop have to do the same. Like in a load of cases, sunglasses are not like that. Sunglasses are a thing that you're going to wear a lot of the time. A lot of people wear them all, a good chunk of their life. These take very little hit in the aesthetics for being a tech-enabled pair of sunglasses. They still just look like sunglasses. They work like sunglasses. They released the second version just before Christmas there. They're like, twice as good camera, twice as good sound. They have the AI kind of on board, etc. I think it's like, it is on one end of the spectrum where I think it will be an everyday wearable AI-powered piece of tech. And then the other end of the spectrum is, say, maybe Vision Pro, where I think Vision Pro is going to be quite expensive. It's going to probably be something you will not leave your house with, or like not safely leave your house with. It's going to be quite an immersive experience. That's an entirely different type of, I don't even know if you'd call it a wearable, you'd probably just call it like a different type of computing form. What when you think about wearables, and I know, Emmet, you've like a lot of background in the area, and then like if you think about like is the watch done for in an area in a world post all this, or do you think the watch will have a resurgence? Do you see watches with cameras where you can point at things? Like where do you think all this will go?
I'm excited. I think the watch has a good chance of being an important form factor. Like my reaction to the Humane pin was like, wow, cool, but I really expect the next version of the Apple Watch, if they've got their skates on, to do 100%. Apart from the projection,
The camera.
onto
What about the
palm,
camera?
which was
Like,
the least.
do you see watches with cameras coming?
Yeah, I mean, this is a long time ago, but we prototyped them back in the day. There's no technical barrier. You know what I mean? So, and now this is the timing thing, and it is funny to hear like you talking about now sunglasses with computer because
Yeah,
I am still living in the past in which Google Glass is a complete failure, a fully mistimed.
yeah, yeah.
I think that's what it is. And by the way, they didn't look like sunglasses or glasses, and that was a very important
They were ridiculous looking.
misstep there as well. Whereas the Meta ones that you described do, and you can go out and about, and most people won't know that you're wearing a computer on your face. But you were asking me about something else there.
Well,
Well, I was sort of saying on
well,
this.
so one just on that. I think Google Glasses looked like a computer on your
Yeah,
face, and I think something that's incredibly important here is Ray-Bans are timeless. Like there are certain kind of things in fashion or that people
Yeah,
wear, like Adidas Sambas, timeless. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
Converse, classic Converse, timeless. There's just some things that are timeless, and Ray-Bans are timeless. Like the classic Ray-Bans are timeless, and no matter what's happening, baggy trousers are in, skinny trousers are in.
mm,
Doesn't matter. Ray-Bans will always be there. I think that's an incredibly smart partnership, and one reason why it might succeed.
mm, mm. The original vision, for what it's worth, for the glasses was a contact lens, right? That could like beam or whatever that you could see information on directly, and they kind of compromised their way back to the glasses. You realize now that
yeah.
starting with a chunky pair of hipster sunglasses is a way better place to start there because you can fit a computer in it. So yeah,
Yeah, and people already wear them. Like
yeah,
I think people overlook that. Like, but like when Apple launched the watch, they partnered with like actual watchmakers to like get straps that made it look like a real watch or like
yeah,
a classic watch. And there's reasons like why like fashion matters when you're asking somebody to wear something 24/7. And yeah, like the Google Glass looked like a lab sort of goggles with a computer attached to one corner of it or something. It was
yeah.
a bad
To be
decision.
honest, it's a bit. I think a mistake a lot of companies make in this space is they get wrapped up in their own, I guess, kind of ego and belief, and they like to think that the device that they're going to ship will become a status symbol. So like having it's intentionally looks different, and like people want people to turn their like noun into a verb. Like I hoover the sitting room. I don't Dyson the sitting room, right? And
Yeah,
like
yeah,
there's this aspiration, kind of ego driven, that like no, our thing will look different.
yeah,
And I think that's a mistake.
yeah,
For something like this, and it's
yeah,
much better to try and fit into people's habits. Like your question earlier, right? Why did I not use Google Translate, or why did, Google Glass, whatever? I'm used to now using ChatGPT on my phone.
yeah.
Very used to it. It's an app I use quite a lot, increasingly. And so it was very natural it was a habit I'd formed already. It wasn't a new habit I had to form.
Makes sense. Um, what's your prediction for Vision Pro?
I'm definitely keen to try it. From the demos, this is back to like great keynote and what's it like. And I bet when you try it, you'll be like, oh, similar to the experience you had with the iPhone. But like, I mean, the keynote looked excellent to me. It looks like they've done a really good technology job. I'm looking forward to trying it out. The social questions around it are the more obvious ones. The fact that you'll more than likely use it on your own at home in your home office or whatever probably gets them out of jail in that regard. So I think it'll be interesting to see, but like something like that, you clearly have to let Apple be Apple and like get back to me in 3 years, and we'll see what they've managed to actually turn it into, in terms of getting the costs down and getting the applications to be like more applicable to regular people and so on. I mean, I have a hard time believing it'll be as broadly adopted ultimately as the iPhone,
Yeah,
but they might have another watch or AirPods on their hands, in which case, like, great for them.
there's one hardware manufacturer we haven't mentioned, and they haven't released any hardware yet. That's why. But have you heard the rumors about OpenAI potentially building a hardware device?
Uh, I think OpenAI AI are in an interesting position right now, in that it seems like they're still in the midst of trying to figure out what they want to be. And like what OpenAI might want to be is a hardware company, to your point, a platform services company providing, ChatGPT as a service, a consumer company. That app is on the home screen of your phone now and so on. and they'll probably start to in
And
the
a
next
lab as well. Like,
and a lab, right? Trying to bring about general AI, which is probably their ultimate top level reason d'etre. But like, I think they'll see lots of competition. I'm sure you've talked about this before, Des, but like Apple, it'll be very interesting to see what happens when Siri becomes properly AI enabled. And you were saying like, oh, I got my habit now. ChatGPT is ingrained. Most people don't have that habit, and yet that habit will be a lot more ingrained when it's an OS level integrated thing. So I think they'll see a lot more competition on the consumer side from startups, things like plugins and even their custom GPTs haven't quite, for me at least, captured what I expected them to be. And so I think they'll have to figure out what they want to be in the next year. And but it does seem like, I mean, good for them, right? But
Yeah.
naturally, the hottest company in the world right now, their ambitions are expanding and pointing in many different directions at once. We'll see if they can pull it off. Because the likes of Meta and Apple, who have all that vertical integration and have their own like awesome AI labs and everything, probably start from a stronger place longer term, you know?
Yeah.
I think the one to watch here is Meta. Like OpenAI, incredible company. Like they've already changed the world, and people say that kind of trite, like our company's going to change the world, but they have done it so far. I do think they're in this kind of like, it's so their future is so open, and there's so many opportunities. It'd be interesting to see which one they take. But and there's other providers too here, of course, like Anthropic and so on. But I think Meta have flown under the radar a bit, and if you kind of start adding up the pieces, there's obviously the glasses we've talked about in the hardware, but they also have Llama and they open sourced it, and they've taken it, open sourcing Llama and like really giving it to everyone is a completely different way to play this game. And like you said, they have the integration, and it might be, and they have like Oculus and all sorts of different kind of pieces of the puzzle.
And like WhatsApp, and there's an interesting set of tools that they have to approach the problem. Like we all have this experience when we go home, which is like the home tech, whatever you want to call it, is all fragmented as shit. Like you've got like your Ring doorbell, your Nest camera, like it's all like every different. Your Hoover doesn't talk to this, and then there's like it's one of those, we love standards. That's why we have so many of them. Like they all have to talk to one device, and nothing works basically. It's been a hodgepodge. I just wonder, will the human end up like that, where like your glasses talk to Facebook, your phone talks to OpenAI, your watch talks to Apple, or whatever. Like, will we have that problem, or will somebody actually just nail the full kit?
I think definitely Apple want you to be all in on their ecosystem and see it as yet another thing like the watch and the AirPods that hooks you into buying an iPhone every year and so on. I think it'll be interesting to see for us and how we use AI. Is there, like, I've heard this expressed as the Dunbar's number for bots,
Right?
which is to say, how much room in your life do you have for how many bots? For every single product that you go to, do you want a different co-pilot in the sidebar saying, hey, I'm your Workday co-pilot and so on, and you switch over to Intercom and you have one there, and then you have one at the OS level and another in your phone, or is the Dunbar's number for bots like one or two, right? And there's like one that sits on your operating system and one for that tool that you use for your job all day, and that's it, messaging apps, you probably like, how many messaging apps would you say you use every week? Like 3, 4, 5. Most people are probably like, so there's some kind of dynamic that will play out there, and maybe you'll have different bots for different personal life, work life, blah blah blah.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about 2024. What do we think the future holds? The future being the next 50 weeks.
A lot more, and maybe a lot more like a continuation very much of last year, because I think we definitely haven't extracted all the juice that there is from this at all. And in fact, I think there's an AI overhang in a couple of dimensions. One is that if the current models didn't change, we would still have loads of work to do to work with them, optimize them. And there's probably other, more companies will get into training their own models and things like that as well. There's probably also an overhang in terms of consumer readiness to adopt things. Like, we're all excited, like last November, we were all excited about AI. And, you were saying there, oh, they've changed the world. I think they're in the midst of, or what they did is slowly rolling out across the world and or washing across the world and changing it slowly. But there's still a lot more like consumer readiness. Most people doing their jobs, even knowledge workers, do not use AI tools all day long to do it. And then the last one is like, we have a lot more product to build. A lot of the stuff we saw coming out this year were like features that you could put together in a few weeks or a few months, and we'll probably see like some of the first truly AI first companies and products that required a year and a half to get started and built and so on come out this year. So that'll be
That reminds me, like someone posts this graph every now and then of like, hey, it was to talk about how all the startups are going to die this year, that would have raised in like 2021, 2022. If they couldn't raise again, they'd be dying this year. Somebody else, or at the start, maybe I haven't seen it yet, but you could make a similar argument to that. Like ChatGPT drops in like November 2022, a load of like YC startups, a load of companies in like Q1, Q2 get funded. Like we might start seeing the fruits of the sort of AI wave landing in market this year. Like the AI native startup that was born because of ChatGPT is probably realistically coming to market like now about. You know?
Yeah. All those .io startups, zombie startups are probably ready to pivot to being .ai startups as well. So you'll have that too.
There's that. Paul, what about you?
Yeah, I just kind of a continuation of what Emmet said. Like you mentioned market readiness and so on. I think there's an investment question where 2023, I think for a lot of companies, now not Intercom, we actually went deep, which we could unpack too for people, but a lot of companies went shallow. You know, AI, okay, AI is a thing, and is it the beginning of this new S curve? Unsure, but hey, we better put it on our marketing page. And so people built like thin wrappers over kind of ChatGPT or like just really kind of surface level, shallow stuff. And I think what's quickly going to happen is companies are going to realize that that's not enough, that this is a fundamental change. And again, you can draw parallels. I think it's really useful to draw parallels back to the beginning of the last S curve, which was, you know, smartphones, mobile, etc. Maybe you could argue clouds in there too. But with phones, you know, there's a lot of times people said things like, that will never work on a phone. No one will ever do that on a phone. Never, never, never. They'll always go back to their laptop. And then lo and behold, 2, 3, 4 years later, everyone does it on their phone and doesn't do it on a laptop at all anymore. Like totally transforms behavior. And I think we're going to see something similar this year in 2024, where companies who stay shallow with the thin wrappers, I think will start to really struggle. Whether you're a startup doing a thin wrapper or you're like some bigger company with some kind of like, you know, token investment in AI, I think you're going to start to really see companies realizing they have to go deep. They need to like train all their staff on AI. This isn't like a specialism. Yes, you should have a specialized ML team and all sorts of stuff like that. But like PMs, designers, everyone needs to be fluent in the language of AI. And you'll start to see deep investments and you'll start to see deep products come out of that.
I think the other parallel that we'll see, I'm quite bullish on whenever Apple, you know, ship something in the AI space, because I think like iPhone launching and then kind of iOS becoming the sort of standard for like what software people are used to just raised the bar for design across many aspects of like our lives in general, but certainly our software. And I think because of that, everyone had to kind of get good, and it kind of, in my opinion, it kind of gave birth to like the post Web 2 UX, but like raw product design, like the emergence of, let's say, Dribble and all that, like just people really caring about the aesthetics in a deep way. I think that all flowed from iPhone. Like it just got to the point where like the stocks app on your phone was better designed than every piece of software on your desktop, and people started to try and change that. So the parallel is, I think Apple will launch something in AI. Siri will become AI powered or something like that, and it'll probably be quite good. Not even because Apple are quite good in this case, but just because the LLMs are already quite good. You know, as in talking to ChatGPT is already pretty impressive. So you can imagine it when it's able to like do things inside software on your phone, and you can imagine just like all the stuff you would have loved to have been able to do with Siri, you can now do, and probably similar for Alexa too. But I think that will change consumer readiness for AI, and it'll change the expectations for AI, where it'll just feel really like Stone Age, when you have to do all the pointy clicky shit when you actually just want to say, order me a pepperoni pizza or whatever, right? And I'm not trying to dig up the earlier discussion we had, but like there'll be a load of cases where it's very easy to say the thing you want to happen, and it's very precise to say the thing you want to happen, and you don't feel the need to validate the thing you want to happen. So so the new, like, I think it could give rise to the, like, just, you know, talk or text as the new kind of core input to software. But I think Apple are like going to be the largest driver here. Google to some degree as well, but I think that will kind of change market readiness, which will then make it so that every B2B SaaS provider is like, oh shit, turns out people are now used to talking to their products. I guess we better get on board with that. And so I think that will be like kind of it.
In the same way that 15 years ago they were like, turns out design matters, and this can't look like dog shit.
Get us somebody who understands typography or something, you know, like. So I think that will be a big thing. Emmet, Paul, what about our own world, customer support? What do we think will change in the sort of era of post AI, you know, or during AI?
Big caveat that like none of this is a prediction, or it's a fool's game really doing predictions, I think. But the change around design, actually, if you allow me to go on a riff here, reminds me of the parallel. Like if you go further back, it's obviously not AI, but like 30 years ago, before desktop publishing software, it was X-Acto knives and pots of paint, and that was how you did publishing. And then that process got completely upended with desktop publishing software, right? So design was reinvented completely already, and I'm sure a new iteration of the tools will come along and do the same. But it changes the nature of the work as well. It's back to the Zelda conversation. We were like, work really hard, crap, everything comes back to Zelda eventually.
I'll be waiting.
Paul has had a drink with me before and realizes this happens all the time. But like, you know, working towards that point of like hitting publish and then the thing is out there in the world forever versus working iteratively, I think customer service, to answer your question, might undergo a similar change. There's a book called Finite and Infinite Games by James Carse, and it's this model for thinking about systems, and it calls things games, but really systems in the word. There are games that you play that might be finite, which are the rules are externally defined, there's an end, and there's a win state for the game that you're playing or the model that you're interacting with or whatever. And and that's similar to like publishing something out there and putting it out there into the world forever. We are now, design changed to an infinite game once we especially started shipping things to the web and getting much more iterative about the work that we were doing. And the game becomes less about building a brilliant thing than building the most likely directional thing the fastest and trading speed off against your likelihood for being correct and so on. So customer service, what will happen? I think it'll shift to more like an infinite game from, let's say, resolving as many tickets in an hour as you can, right? And that like very top-down defined, externally defined success criteria. And the end state is close the ticket and get rid of it.
I was going to say, the idea of resolving is actually even part of it, right? Like you think it's done at some point.
And then you think about that shifting, you're like, well, all those things get sorted, crudely speaking. Then the job of customer service becomes about building the relationship on an ongoing basis with this person who's a customer, on an ongoing basis with you because they're paying you a subscription every month or whatever. So the success criteria, like is CSAT or is number of tickets resolved as important in that world? I would suggest they wouldn't be. Maybe we'll have new stats or new ways of measuring success that becomes more likely. But broadly speaking, I like to think about it shifting from this finite bounded game towards much more of an infinite game in the terms of that book I'm talking about.
Cool. Paul, any ideas?
Sorry, just on that one real quick. I think like you gave me the example before of like a soccer match or football match as a finite game. And like this is really stretching the analogy probably, but like, you know, tennis is a finite game. You've got two players back and forth, points end, games end, the match ends. And customer service is a bit like that, you know, like where you've kind of got a customer asking questions or many customers asking questions, literally hitting tennis balls over the net, and someone trying to like literally hit them back, and the shift ends. And, you know, for the most part, most customer service workers, I'd imagine, post-shift, don't think a lot about all those shots they had to play back or whatever. And so I think not only does the, like everything changes there, not just the like CSAT or measurement, but the culture does too, the culture within the team. And then you'll probably end up with people having two like split roles, basically, where you'll have people who are playing the infinite game, building relationships, all that kind of stuff, and people designing the game. You know what I mean? So like the system will need to be designed, orchestrated. So a lot of people are going to start doing things like work out when do bots answer, making sure that it's good quality control, all sorts of stuff like that, which is a much higher impact, higher level job, I think. So I think it's cool. It's cool to think about. It's exciting to think about.
It's all, for what it's worth, like it's interesting to note that a lot of language, resolving queries, and you were saying, oh, even built into that is the concept that it's done in business as well. There's a lot of this like finite thinking, which is, we are going to win and we're going to beat the competition. And you're like, well, you've only beaten them until they beat you again. You know what I mean? Like neither of you is going out of business. And so it's a useful mental model for thinking about not just customer support.
To get back to our actual disciplines, my kind of last question is, how do we think the disciplines of, say, design and product will change over the next year, given what we've seen happen, given the nature of the software we expect to be developed in the coming year? Like, Emmet, you lead a large team of designers here. How do you think design changes post AI?
Again, very, very difficult to make precise predictions here. The tools and the capabilities of the tools will obviously lead the conversation, and people will follow the tools that like serve them best, and so that will drive the changes. But I have thought about this a bit and chatted to people on the team. We have a design principle on the Intercom design team that says that we should build things simple by default, but flexible under the hood. Make it easy to do the obvious common things, but if you really want the power, there's some progressive disclosure you can dive in. And I think we'll probably try and figure out something similar for AI, where like this is a bit back to what you were asking about, like what's it suitable for, what's it good at, and what's it not. And so a lot of those things where things can be automated by default, and then manual under the hood, I think might be a principle that we might be adopt. Personally, maybe I'm just living in the past or not able to detach myself mentally from the current model. I still think we'll have plenty of manual UI. I don't think every UI is going to turn into a chat box with a blinking cursor in it, because a lot of the precision deterministic stuff that we were talking about is better served by clicking on a precise point or choosing from an exact item on a list or whatever it might be. But we will see a lot of that stuff. Like the obvious prediction here, by the way, is like everything goes a bit more chat based. You just type commands and instead of clicking on things. And I think that will happen because the Workday example you cited, although small and simple, is way better, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think, or at least I'd be surprised if we saw the nature of, I think it'll be more additive than replacing of the existing GUI interface.
The way I think about that is, first of all, yes, you want precision input. Like no one wants to like wrestle with a text area to try and explain what they mean when they can just click on the area and drag or whatever it is they need to do. So I think that bit's true. I think where designers need to get good is understanding the capabilities of AI so that they don't end up producing beautiful designs for things that literally shouldn't exist in a post-AI world. As in, like, I'm trying to think of a simple example here, I'm trying to invent a product in my head and then invent a use case in the product. But like the argument I guess I'm making is some stuff can just be literally done by AI. Like say, pick the winner from this set of adverts that we might run based on its LTV CAC data, right? You could imagine a workflow where you drag them around and you sort the table and all that sort of stuff. Or you can imagine a decision the designer made, which is just noted somewhere in Figma as a little text asterisk somewhere, which is pick the winner automatically. And that's like that to me is Elon Musk has that algorithm of the first thing you have to do is get rid of all the things, remove all the components before you start optimizing. Remove the shit that doesn't need to be there. I just wonder in a post AI world, if designers truly understand what AI is capable and reliable for, is there a lot of stuff that actually doesn't need to exist and that if they don't understand AI, they might end up designing, whereas in practice that design is irrelevant.
The barrier to building products is probably way lower, right? Not just because coding GPT assistant type things like Copilot can write a lot of the code for you and you can be a lot faster, but because you probably can, if you're a startup, just build the text version of the thing and not have the manual fallback. And so you probably see it approached from lots of different sides there.
Paul, what about product management?
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you talk about that. I actually have a for all of this conversation we're like clearly all in on AI, believe in its potential power, very positive conversation. I have a concern to kind of like play out a different side of this for a second. What like you think about product management, what makes a great product manager? I think the best product managers probably have three core attributes. One is they're extremely strong at critical thinking, right? They can like look at something objectively. They can take in all the input, really think about like what's true and therefore what the implications might be. So they're really good at critical thinking. They're extremely progress oriented. So they want to all the time progress, 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 building, shipping, learning, looping. And obviously communication is the third category. And I actually do have like, it's what makes a bad product manager, like, glorified project management, effectively, like not critically thinking about anything and just kind of like moving the trains along the tracks, whatever. And so like brilliant product managers are great at critical thinking. And maybe that's the defining characteristic. And I kind of worry a bit that in an AI world where you can do things like don't listen to the customer interviews directly. Hey, AI, please summarize these 12 interviews. Or like, don't write the product strategy yourself, or don't write the product brief yourself. Click the magic wand and that'll generate the thing that you then just click send to the team. Suddenly, like there's a world where AI accidentally turns a lot of these otherwise would have been brilliant product managers into the bad type, where they're more like project management. So literally like, click, magic wand, fill, send, right, next problem. And because these people are progress oriented, they're gonna probably wanna click magic wand a lot. And so like there's something there to keep an eye on, that like and not just, this probably applies to lots of jobs, not just product management, that we don't lose the ability to think critically.
I think there's a part there which is just the details matter, right? Like, because I could argue like a CS person might say, well, you're okay with me clicking the magic wand to answer this question, and you don't seem to see an issue with that. Like, why is it that your crew, the PMs, are somehow like understood to be so much more important in terms of what they write or whatever? But I think like details matter, and I think like the difference between, say, like generally speaking, there is one answer to a customer support question, like as in how does blah work, the answer for blah is that, and like so as a result the input output matching is pretty tight. Something like what is our strategy for redesigning Messenger or something like that, it should be a pretty open-ended thing, and if the AI can guess it, we'd have to wonder, is it a strategy at all? Like, because what is, if you've any, like, I don't have a great degree of understanding of how like large language models work, but I know that they focus on something that looks like an answer as opposed to like a really strong opinionated piece. Same reason, like I don't really believe like in LLMs is like are going to be like particularly compelling fiction writers, because they lack probably the ability to properly surprise you or whatever, because they're not trying to surprise you, they're trying to do things that look like things that should happen or whatever. So I do worry about the magic wand creation for product managers, for project managers, for generally speaking, like in a lot of cases, like anywhere where the details really, really matter. And then in writing, in fiction writing, I'd argue like the word choice matters, because you're actually, the complexion of the piece matters greatly. So I worry that in general, if the path to efficiency is true, if the path to PM efficiency is true, not caring about the details, either in the output or in the summarization of all the user feedback, you're just gonna end up with some real vanilla ass shit, right? Like,
I think it applies to both cases though. Like I'll go back to PM in a sec, but in customer service, it's absolutely the case that lots and lots of questions have one correct answer. I think in the future bots will answer all those questions anyway.
Yeah.
And like we'll have like an interim period where people will click magic wands and it'll pre-fill, and we'll have co-pilots and so on. But ultimately, like those will be answered by bots.
Yeah.
And I think the other type of query that shows up in customer service a lot is the more complex query. It's the like troubleshooting query. It's the like, people write in like, my thing doesn't work.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, okay, I mean anything. And then, like, you're trying to work through the problem, and it could be all sorts of stuff. And so like, I think in lots of cases you don't want customer service people to click the magic wand either.
Yeah.
And so then you can apply the reverse to both sides. I'm sure in PM land there's plenty of time where the AI can help people write and can accelerate work for sure.
Yeah.
But I go back to the critical thinking part, and I go back to like judgment. Great product managers have great judgment. Where does great judgment come from? Experience, like listening directly to customer interviews, the details, like, it's just going in, and your brain is incredibly good at synthesizing and summarizing. And
the other thing though is writing is an incredibly good method of thinking, right? You might think you know what you think, and then you try and write it down, and you realize, shit, I didn't at all. But then you struggle through for an hour, and you actually manage to like get your thoughts out. And then when writing is free, it also like you're less forced to do that as well. So on the other hand, I wonder like as the cost of generating writing like goes to near zero, maybe the value does as well. Like
I think that's possible.
like where there's a bunch of PM docs, right? Meeting notes or whatever, things like that probably are awesome. Give me the AI generated version, no problem. It's the thinking that you don't want to lose the ability to do.
Yeah.
And writing is intrinsically tied up in thinking, especially the more remote we go as well. Because I write something, I think through writing it, I send it to you, you give me your feedback, blah blah blah.
That's a great example though, because the the kind of three I had, like critical thinking, communication, progress. Like the meeting notes thing is communication, and that's where AI can really help. Like, great product. You think like, oh, the best product managers I've ever worked with. They weren't the ones who were the best at taking meeting notes and sending them out. Now they're typically good at that too, but that's not what makes them great.
That's undifferentiated,
right? Yeah, totally. Doesn't make them great. What makes them great is the critical thinking piece.
Yeah.
Are we a long way away from a magic wand creating a new bullshit PM framework that turns into a blog post and goes viral?
Already. I'm sure it's out there already.
Cool.
Yeah.
We've overrun by about 40 minutes. So I will say thank you, Paul. Thank you, Emmet. This has been Intercom Product, and thank you all for listening.
Thanks.